you have an identity as a certain, right, political party, and that's like the core of your identity. And then if you deviate from the platform of that party, then you're somehow not a real Democrat or a real Republican. And so that kind of identity work becomes really important for thinking about this division because one of the big things that happens in addition to that kind of identity work is that you have different media spheres, you're talking to different people, you get different ideas about what's happening in the world and the baseline of like reality, but also different baseline assumptions. So I'm going to give you one of the examples that I give to think about, right, how this development of different baseline assumptions impacts the way that you can have conversations with people, or it's something that you really need to address if you do hope to have conversations. And that is, right, so nonsense example, but if your cousin sits down at the table and says, "Oh my goodness, the monster under my bed has fangs." How do you respond if your cousin sits down at the table and says that to you? I don't
This
know.
is a real question for me. How would I
Oh, yeah.
respond?
How do you respond if your cousin sits down and says, "Oh my goodness, the monster under my bed has fangs"?
How old are they?
Mm, 25.
Oh, oh, that's how I would respond. I would just start laughing. Um, but seriously, if they're 25 and they say monster under my bed has fangs, think how would I say? To be honest, I feel like I would ignore them. Like what kind of comment is that? Like I don't think I would even engage in it unless they were watching a TV show. I would assume that they're watching a TV show, or I would assume it's not their actual voice that's talking, or maybe that they're talking to a child. But I would not take it seriously. Let's put
Yeah,
it
and
that way.
so here's your like nerd moment, right? This is uh Rita Paul Grace, right? This idea that like the people around you are trying to communicate, and so you usually give people a lot of leeway and trying to engage. Like you're trying to figure out like what are they doing? What are they saying? Because there is this kind of inherent need, desire, want to actually communicate with other people and to assume that they're trying to communicate with you. Um, and they are. And so if they sit down and say, "The monster under my bed has fangs," right? So the first thing that you need to do, whether it's this or some right political conversation you get into, is try to figure out what are the baseline assumptions that they have that might differ from the baseline assumptions that you have. And in this case, it's very clear, right? Maybe Lucy, you're like monsters, right? Monsters don't exist. But obviously they think that they do. And
Yeah.
if you can't start from that point, then or get at why, right? Or what the baseline assumptions are, then you're never going to be able to move beyond that. And if you're not cognizant of it, you just get stuck in this kind of cycle of fighting about something that you're not sure what you're fighting about because you're just coming from different, sets of assumptions.
And I'm trying to think of something like a political conversation where I have felt that way, where it's like, why do I even talk to you? Or what are you even saying? And a lot of time this happens around like immigration, right? All immigrants are illegal or all Mexicans are illegal. If someone just told me all Mexicans are illegal, I'd be like, what? Like
Right.
I think I would similarly not respond or maybe even laugh and then just not engage because I would not even know where to begin.
Yeah. And that's, it's hard to deconstruct those very different, right, baseline assumptions or views of the world. And so, your goal should not necessarily be to immediately try to move that, right? But to
Mhm.
understand that this person is operating from a reality where monsters exist. And they told me this because they want to talk about the monster having fangs, and I need to hear them out and understand what they're trying to say. And I know that they're operating from a different baseline assumption than I am. But instead of getting mired down in that kind of, circular attempting to immediately convince somebody that monsters don't exist if they believe that they do, then it's a better tactic to kind of just listen, right? To let them to start asking them questions and be like, oh, tell me more, right? So that
Yeah.
you can get a sense of where they're coming from, because you're not going to be able to connect with them in any way if you don't understand where they're coming from.